Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Between Two Chairs. With you is Fernando Arencibia, and as always, with me is the always very curious Jennifer Woolman. Jennifer, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
And we have a very special guest, and this is a little bit like, the subtitle of our podcast is Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, and sometimes we kind of just cover the essentials. And today, what I'm excited about is that this is a little bit of deep cuts, right? This is when you get into really intricate, great tips, and that are both usable for those that are operating commercial buildings and very important for commercial practitioners such as ourselves to be aware of. So, Jennifer, without further ado, would you introduce our amazing guest today?
Sure. Today, Michelle Sadeghi is the Director of Energy Tax Credits and Incentives at Kaufman Rawson, a CPA and advisory firm that was born in Miami but has offices worldwide. And she is going to talk about how to increase your bottom line with the energy efficient commercial building tax deduction, also known as 179D. And before your eyes glaze over because it's talking about taxes, this is about saving money, increasing your bottom line while increasing sustainability. So it really is a true feel-good episode. So Michelle, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up? Siblings, school, what you do for fun, that kind of background stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys both for having me. I'm honored to be a guest. I've definitely listened to a handful of your guys' episodes, and I love just the dynamic and the banter. So I feel a little, excited to be here today. But a little bit about myself. I was actually born and raised in Oklahoma, of all places. That's where my family is. And I went from there to Colorado, where I did my undergraduate. I studied environmental engineering. And I lived in Colorado in the Boulder and Denver area for about 10 years. And there is where I started my career in this space. And I actually started as an energy efficiency engineer or a sustainability consultant. So my background is very much on the design side of buildings. And we were hired a lot as a consultant to commercial buildings, all types, whether it multifamily, schools, higher ed, hospitals, office buildings. And we were brought in to help optimize these designs to make them more energy efficient. The reason I was on those projects varies. It could have been because they had certain green building certification goals. Maybe their funding was tied to some sort of sustainability. Maybe there was a jurisdiction that mandated that they meet certain green building standards. So that was really my career for the first 10 to 12 years. And then back in 2018, I moved to South Florida. And I stayed on with my company, and I brought their presence down to South Florida for a few years. And then I recently found myself at Kaufman Rawson about a year and a half ago. So my role at Kaufman Rawson, it's really drawing upon the very similar background of energy efficiency, sustainability consulting, but instead of on the design side, I'm really coming in when the building is placed in service, and I'm helping the owner of these projects to qualify for tax credits and deductions. So it's a very similar skill set, but instead of on the front end, I'm coming in on the back end and helping them get these credits. In terms of me personally, I am married and I have a dog. I love South Florida. I was really kicking and screaming about moving here back in 2018. But I have been very pleasantly surprised, and I don't see us going anywhere anytime soon. I love the outdoors. When I was in Colorado, I spent my summers hiking and backpacking, and my winters snowboarding. So I definitely miss that, but at least we have the beach as our playground down here. So far, I can't complain. There's worse places we could have ended up.
Good. Well, we're glad you're here, both in South Florida and on our podcast. If you can just dive right in and give us some background on 17090. I'm not going to say the whole name because it's long, but
yeah, absolutely. I'll chime in and we'll say the long name. So it's the 179D energy efficient commercial building deduction. And what we're doing at Kaufman Rawson is, we serve a lot of the big developers down here in South Florida already on the tax side of their work. And this was just really a really nice segue and a really nice way for my skill set to fit in to help them qualify for more tax benefits. And what that deduction does is it applies to commercial buildings and also multifamily buildings, 4 stories and higher. And a lot of our projects right now are actually on the new construction side. So essentially, we get engaged pretty late in the design, maybe even during construction on a project where they're letting us know, hey, we have a project that's going to be placed in service during this time frame. I'll then take the drawings and I will review them to make sure that I believe that they're going to qualify, because in order to qualify for this deduction, you have to meet certain energy efficiency standards. The good news about 179D is that the standard that it's referencing is about 3 building code cycles behind. So most of our projects built to today's Florida building code are automatically qualifying for this deduction. And the reason for that is because the IRS is giving a little bit of time for everyone to catch up, because the deduction was enhanced in 2022 in the Inflation Reduction Act. And so they boosted some of the savings, they boosted some of the dollar values on the table, but they're also giving kind of like a buffer period for everyone to get used to the program before 2027, which is when they're going to increase the stringency of the energy efficiency requirements. That being said, in 2027, our building code will have already also advanced. So I still think we're going to be in a pretty good position to qualify for this deduction. So kind of back to the process, what I'll do is I'll review the drawings. I'll say, you know what, your project looks great. I think you're going to qualify. And this is the deduction you can expect on your project. And that deduction varies. It's anywhere from 50 cents up to $5 per square foot. And, where that range falls, it depends on a couple of things. So one is how energy efficient the building is. So I would build an energy model and prove the energy savings, and that would help me determine where in that range. And then the other part of it is if the project is meeting prevailing wages. So that's going to be another determinant.
That's an interesting component, right? Because you don't think of wages when you're thinking about energy equipment and energy efficiency and sustainability. So can you dive a little bit into that? Because I found that really curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So the base range is really 50 cents to $1, and then it gets boosted by 5 times, $2.50 to $5 if you meet the prevailing wages. And I think, part of this Inflation Reduction Act bill of 2022, a big portion of it was tackling climate change and climate, items. But there's also the idea of increasing wages and making sure we have good labor requirements and that we're sticking to them. So kind of encouraging projects to pay the Davis-Bacon wages on their projects and really kind of stimulate the economy in that way. So that's really the basis of it. So,
and these are the wages of the people that are finalizing the work, the construction work. Is it the wages of those that are installing the energy efficiency equipment and things like that? How is that determined?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think when they pushed this out and made these boosts, they hadn't really thought it all through in terms of the documentation side of things. So they've kind of issued more and more guidance on that, but it really is for the entire construction project. So it's not really honed into just the equipment. It's for the entire project. So what we're finding is certain affordable housing projects, or maybe certain projects that are on county land that are required to meet those wages. Those ones are really great candidates because they're already doing it. But I can't say that this boost in deduction is going to cause a project to go from standard wages to prevailing wages just to get this benefit, because I don't think the dollars and cents add up there. So, I mean, but that being said, even at the base rate, it still makes a lot of sense on projects. And each year the rates are increasing due to inflation. So I think we're actually all the way up to $5.65 per square foot. So yeah, there's kind of a lot to unpack there, but it does apply to the entire construction project.
Michelle, can you give people kind of like the basics of qualifications? I know that there's like a 25% reduction in energy use and things of that nature. So what are the basic for people that are maybe managing a commercial building or a new project and they want to consider this?
Yeah. So what's unique about 179D is that we're really looking at the energy performance of the entire building holistically. So maybe, you don't put in really good windows on your project, but your lighting design is excellent. So that might be able to make up for the deficiency that you have in your envelope and still get you there. So I can't really give you like a list of do A, B, and C and you'll get there. But what I can say is if you're building to the latest Florida building code, you're going to be in really good shape. And I would say most times I'm able to get projects to qualify. So I would say what I will touch on is maybe some of the exceptions. Sometimes when we have really high-end projects that have interior designers that like to come in and go crazy with lights and just light up the entire building, those projects can be tough because they're consuming a lot more energy and there's not a lot of wiggle room I can do, on that. And then the other thing I'll mention is to qualify, you need to have a good LED lighting design. You need to have your HVAC system that's at and exceeding the current Florida building code, and then the envelope is really the tougher one. I wouldn't say that it's a requirement that you do something to enhance it, but it always helps. Anything that you're going to do on your project helps. So if you go for like a low solar heat gain coefficient glazing or something like that, which also contributes to thermal comfort of your building. So, it kind of has a double purpose there.
How would you get somebody who's not building brand new? Because I know it also applies to upgrades and improvements. So in that sense, what would you have somebody who is doing building upgrades and improvements focus on? Like, where are they going to get the most bang for their buck if they want to apply for the 170/90?
Yeah, great question. So I think the lowest hanging fruit for existing buildings is lighting, right? Going in and doing an LED lighting retrofit. That's going to be not only the cheapest upgrade, but it's also going to give you the best outcome on your operating costs. So that would be the lowest hanging fruit. HVAC upgrades, if you're replacing a chiller to a more energy efficient chiller on your building, if you're switching out rooftop units or, ventilation systems that sit up on the roof and come and provide ventilation to the entire building, those types of upgrades are typically going to put you in a good position to qualify. For the existing buildings, that whole program was also kind of redone with the Inflation Reduction Act. So there's a traditional path of qualifying, which is where I'm going to build the energy model with the upgrades you have planned. I'm going to prove you qualify and prove that you meet the energy savings threshold. But there's now a new way that they've added where you can actually look at utility bills. And so in that analysis, I think the cost to perform the study comes down a little bit because it's not as extensive as building a full energy model. We're actually just going to look at your utility bills for the last year. And then what we have to do is we have to track the utility bills for a year after the equipment is placed in service, and we can prove the energy savings that way. That path, it has its pros and cons. I think a pro is that you're seeing the real energy performance of your building. It's not speculative. It's not, comparative analysis of these hypothetical energy models. It's like, this is real data. I would say the downside is it's risky because maybe something gets triggered on and, your utility data just doesn't prove the savings that it should be proving because you had some sort of operational issue that in the building during that time. So that's just something to keep in mind for the retrofit type projects.
So you mentioned chillers on roofs, and that got me thinking about roofs in general, because down here with our insurance issue, a lot of people are having to change their roofs because insurance companies just won't even look at them if they're past a certain age. So does a new roof qualify, or does it have to be a special kind of roof?
So the way this deduction works is it's not going to come in and say, oh, you replaced the chiller and you had to also replace the roof, so we're going to cover the cost of it. It's on a per square foot basis. And so I don't think that that's a way that we can look at it. So a lot of times it's either going to be the dollars per square foot or the cost of the equipment, whichever is less. So 90% of the time, the dollars per square foot is less than the cost of, all this HVAC equipment. So that's going to be the limiting factor of your deduction. But to answer your question more directly, I don't think, the structural improvements needed would be part of the energy efficient equipment. But I don't think that really matters because you wouldn't need those extra dollars because you'd already be limited by the dollars per square foot.
Got it.
If that makes sense.
For people that are launching a new project or considering doing a full rehab of their building, when is the best time to get somebody like you engaged to give them that guidance, right, as to how they can maximize this tax credit? And I know you guys work on other things. It's not just a 179D. You're holistically looking at other opportunities.
Yeah, so for 179D, the timing can be, it can be wide. We have projects that we're also able to do look back studies. So I'm working on a couple of projects that were placed in service, as far back as 2020, 2021, because we're able to go back and claim that deduction via a change in accounting. I say that, if there's any financial people listening, but that means you don't actually have to amend your return. So you can actually take the deduction this year as a change in accounting, and you just have to adjust it for any depreciation that's happened over the years from when it was placed in service to now. Look back studies are on the table for new construction. We'd like to. For now, we're able to get involved late because, like I said, most projects are in good shape. I think as we move forward, we're going to start to want to pivot and get ourselves involved more in the design. Also because that's my background. I was a design consultant. So what I would really like to see is, instead of having projects hire a design consultant, sustainability consultant, and go after a LEED certification. And for that LEED certification, they have to pay that consultant. That consultant has to build an energy model and do all these other things. Then they wait, the building gets constructed, a year and 2 years goes by. Then the tax people are looking at deductions. They're like, 179D. Well, let's hire a consultant to build this energy model. That's just like replicated work. And what I'd really like to see is to get somebody like us who has that design consulting background and also the tax CPA background involved in the design side so that we can help them meet their green building certification goals, but also reuse some of that work on the back end because it just requires some modifications. I can't just plug and chug, but I can modify that energy model and get it to meet the IRS standards and get the building to qualify for 179D. So I think that's the direction I'd like to see this whole space head in is get us involved early. We can optimize your design. We can get you to meet your green building goals. And then we can get you these tax credits on the back end as well.
I love that. It's always easier and ends up being, I think, more cost effective in the long run to get everything done up front than trying to go backwards once everything's done. Are there any state incentives and deductions that can be combined with 179D?
So I do think there are some on the residential side. 170D is commercial. I don't know that there's a lot of state commercial incentives right now. I think they're rolling out some things, but they're all really brand new and I really couldn't speak to them. But I do think on the residential side, there are for homeowners, there's some rebates for their air conditioning units, for going to like Energy Star roof, which has a low solar reflectivity index. There's stuff for, energy efficient windows as well as water heaters. There's a lot of stuff in that space on the residential side. But I can't really speak. I haven't seen a lot coming down on the commercial side.
We are having a real issue that is impacting condo associations and condo buildings, and they're going to have to go through a lot of deferred maintenance issues that need to be addressed because of state law that has recently passed and that it's coming into effect soon. And so is a program like this helpful for condo associations?
That's a really good question. The way it works right now is whoever builds the building, places its service, they get the deduction. On existing buildings, whoever is replacing the equipment and putting that equipment in service, they could then take the deduction against their tax liability. So as long as the homeowners association has a tax liability, and they are the ones purchasing and installing the equipment, on a building wide basis, I think there could be some eligibility there. I haven't run into that, just full disclosure. I do think it's something we're going to start seeing more and more of, like you're mentioning. But just to keep in mind, it would have to be the energy equipment of the building. It couldn't be really infrastructure upgrades. It would need to be rooftop unit or anything that's consuming energy for the building.
That makes sense. Is there anything else? I mean, is the bulk of your time invested in 179D? Are there any other things that you're excited that you're working on with Kaufman Rossen for your clients?
Yeah. So, there's also the 45L, which is the energy efficient home tax credit. It might be switched around. There's so long names, but 45L tax credit. So the credit has a little bit more bang for its buck. It's anywhere from $500 per unit. Then that gets multiplied by 5 for prevailing wages to $2,500 per unit if the building is meeting these Energy Star certification. So that program has been around for a while as well, but it was really redone via the Inflation Reduction Act. And before there were certain tests and certain, energy performance thresholds that the building had to meet, but it was easier to do retroactively. Like as long as they had these 4 or 5 design elements and we were able to get on site and do certain tests, blower door test, duct leakage test, whatever, we could get them that credit. Now it's tied to a green building certification, and that one is the Energy Star multifamily new construction. And so what that means is that program has actually already forced projects to get this 45L tax credit on their mind up front, because there are certain design elements that have to be present and you can't put them in retroactively. So if they're not there, then you're automatically 45L's off the table. And then you also have to get the certification, and there are certain, pre-drywall inspections and things that have to happen that make that credit a little bit more cumbersome to go after, but totally doable as long as you're planning and starting in the design, and that, kind of just to talk about things I'm excited about and what I'd like to see is right now, a lot of jurisdictions around the country are starting to add this program as one of their options. And it's also one of the options in certain states for their LIHTC funding, which is the low income housing tax credit. So where affordable housing projects go after LIHTC, they also have to meet a green building standard. Energy Star multifamily new construction is now making its way onto that list in certain states because it's a state by state decision. And then aside from affordable housing, jurisdictions are adding this to the list. What I'd love to see more jurisdictions in Florida adding this program as one of their green building requirements. Again, just to get that efficiency of I'm meeting the city of Miami's requirements for their green building program by doing this. And then I'm also getting this 45L tax credit on the back end. Because right now, if you do a LEED building, you might be hitting 90% of the requirements for Energy Star, but you don't get that certification. So now you're having to pay the consultant to do LEED, you're going to have to pay a consultant to do Energy Star, and then you're going to get the tax credits, and they're not going to be worth it. So I'd like to see those align moving forward as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for all this information. We really appreciate it. We think there was a lot in there, and we need to do a deeper dive onto some of them. But I think at least it's teased our listeners with some places to look and some additional things to think about.
And Michelle, before we let you go, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just curious. What surprised you most about the move to Miami?
Oh man. So many things. The move to I think, Florida has a reputation outside of the state, and that Florida man and it being crazy and wild, like all these weird things. But I think once you get here, it's just everything's world class. And I think I'm like, people are just maybe they just don't know, or maybe they're just a little jealous. That's all what I have to say. We've got great restaurants, great beaches, great sports, great arts. The art scene really surprised me. It's so robust down here. I'm in Palm Beach County and near Delray, and Delray is amazing. So yeah, it's been really great.
I was gonna say spoken like a native Miamian, but there's not a lot of native Miamians.
No.
So spoken like a true Miamian. I love the answer. That's awesome, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time. We so appreciate it. We are incredibly happy that you got to join us, and this is very valuable information. So.
And we wrap up with a quick fun fact. So the fun fact that I have obviously is energy based. It's Florida typically ranks 3rd or 4th in the nation in overall electricity consumption. We're behind Texas and California, and we're a net importer of fuels, including natural gas, coal, uranium, and petroleum products. So, not only will hiring Michelle and doing all of these tax credit worthy improvements in your developments help your bottom line, it'll also help the environment and the state of Florida economy. So again, feel good all around.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to keeping our line of communication open. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Thank you.